far.
Okay, good to see everybody. Thanks for coming out. Former SU great back there. Good practice today in the dome. Wanted to get in there. It's good because it was really hot. You guys ever been in the dome when it's 90 out? Feels good. Sauna. Don't have to pay for it. Got good work though. What we did today is we had a mock game and tried to throw as many situations as we could at the kids, and a lot of personnel changes and made up injuries and all that stuff. Somebody's down and runs in and out, trying to formulate a mock game situation. And I thought they did a pretty good job at it. And then tomorrow we'll come on back and have another good full practice. And but it's moving forward. So with that, any questions?
Take your questions. You raise your hand, please. Right.
Scott, is closing practice mostly an injury-related thing to try and
It's
keep
a
that
number.
away?
It's a number of things. You know, I just feel like it's in the best interest of this team this year to kind of hone in and focus in on each other a little bit tighter. You know, for the most part, you know, it's more than just one or two things. Just, you know, one of those calls you got to make.
Other questions?
Bill O'Brien at Penn State, Scott, he's going to reveal his quarterback at some point. Does that give you any kind of advantage to
I don't know
who it's going to be?
I mean, I always like to know who we're playing against. You know, as soon as we can find out. You know, being a defensive guy, you know, trying to get their personnel and that sort of thing. So obviously that's why I don't feel like revealing it from our side of the fence is in our best interest. But you know, shoot, he's a great football coach, so. You know, I've got a lot of respect for Bill O'Brien and what he's done over there at Penn State.
Michael?
Hey Scott, Julian Wiggum's a name we've heard a lot about in camp this year. How's he kind of fitting in right now? Is he still right in there pushing for a starting spot?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, we have two pretty good corners. And, you know, really three. You know, when you look at Keon and you look at Richard and Brandon Reddish, that combination is good. So we see Julian as a kid that can be as good as any of them eventually. And there's been points in camp where you could say, you know, he's pretty doggone good. The other guys have played a lot of football for the last few years, you know, and game experience is something that's invaluable. But I love Julian because he can do a number of different things. You know, in high school, most of his interceptions were at safety. So, you know, similar to when we had Philip Thomas, who started out at corner and then he played some safety and we moved him around in the nickel and dime packages and stuff. I think Julian gives us the luxury of movement with a long athlete that can cover some ground. He made a real nice play today coming off a man-free situation. So I'm pleased with him and I think he's ready, and he comes from good football stock down there at Dwyer's. Coach Jack Daniels does a great job down there and he knows how to play.
Other questions? Nate?
The obvious one is quarterback, but are there any other positions that still have to sort themselves out?
There's a handful of them, you know. You know, for me, it's a matter of if we can't make a good decision at a lot of the different positions, let's play them both, and let's get in a rotation. Like I've mentioned before, you know, especially on the defensive side of the ball, you know, you got 11 positions, but you'd love to play 17, 18 kids in a game, and in the fourth quarter, you know, you're a little bit fresher. So at some positions we'll have that luxury. At other positions we're going to have to really take a look at, you know, the best man in and the best situations.
Chris?
Scott, what did Chuck do at your previous stop to impress you that you brought him here? And what is unique about him as a defensive coordinator than maybe other coaches?
Well, you know, for me and Chuck, you know, Chuck and I were at Western Michigan together, and you know, really after the first 3 or 4 days together, we just were like brothers. You know, I mean, like brothers. He's a coach's son, as am I. And we just saw eye to eye on how you develop players and kids. And, you know, we also had the same philosophical viewpoints of defense and the style of defense that you should be playing, especially at the collegiate level. So I didn't know if we'd ever have a shot to coach again together. You know, it's just one of those deals. And the opportunity presented itself, and it was, you know, he's like, what took you so long to call?
I know you've talked about it before, but being the son of a coach, how does that influence him, and maybe in what ways can you see that shine through?
You know, I think it's a difficult. It'd be like trying to explain to somebody that never played football what it's like to play football, or trying to explain to a man what it's like to give birth. In my opinion, and being a coach's son, it's different. I mean, hiding underneath the card table, watching the 16 millimeter go frontwards and backwards and clickety click click as a kid. That's how I used to fall asleep at night. That's how he used to fall asleep. People say cut-ups. You young guys think of cut-ups as something a computer does for it. Cut-ups were my dad and Chuck's dad at different places coaching, cutting 16 millimeter and hanging them up, saying that was a good play right there, and finding the next good play that was the same formation, and then you put them on this little thing, and you took the two cut-ups and put them together with this little piece of tape and wound it. As kids, we loved that, man. You know what I mean? And those are the things Chuck and I talked about. It's like, it's just pretty cool. Our profession's great. And sometimes it's hard, and a lot of hours and all that. But we always talk about, you believe we're getting paid to do this. You know what I mean? And those are some of the things that, you know, make me appreciate another coach. It's a coach's son.
Brad?
Scott, I know you mentioned a couple of times that looking for the wide receivers to step up a little bit. How much do you think their adjustment is to, you know, getting used to Georgia's style, getting used to the new offense, and kind of, do you see them progressing as we get closer?
Yeah, I see them progressing. You know, it's just one of those things that has to be consistency. You know, Brett, I think we got a good group of kids that have enough ability to win some games there. I don't think we have any singular player that you say he's a All-American candidate. You know, I think it's going to be one of those deals again where we have to say there's strength in numbers and do a good job saying this guy's good at these types of concepts, another guy's good at these types of concepts, and then package them together when you get into a game plan. But you know, the kids have been working hard, and I thought they had. Yesterday we had a pass Skelly situation with we had 20, I think it was 24 plays, and we completed 23 and 24 throws. So I was happy with that. You know, that's with the ones and the twos, and that's with the ones and the two wide receivers, tight ends, and whatnot. So I think it's a mindset that there's strength in numbers, and we have to be consistent with our play and playing a lot of kids.
Michael?
Guys, we get closer to the Saturday. Have you thought at all about how involved or not involved you want to be in the play calling for both George and Chuck?
Yeah, I won't be involved with the play calling. You know, I know when I was a coordinator, I did not care the coaches that micromanaged. You know, it's like you know, you have all kinds of different scientists, and some guys are going to study one particular thing and be great at it. And for somebody that's a general guy, come in and micromanage, I don't believe in that. We hired those guys because they're extremely talented. We're going to let them do their job. Don't second guess them during the game at all. Come back after the game, look at what worked, what didn't work, what we could have done better. But I want to let my coaches coach and let our players play. You know, I believe in it. And, you know, as much as I love the X's and O's, I've had enough of that for a lot of years, and I'll just sit in the back and if something looks good, make a suggestion. If it fits to what they want to do, great. If it doesn't, that's great too. I don't want to let them go and run with it.
Lindsay?
When you're going to have a new quarterback, how helpful is it to have an experienced guy like Mackey for quarterbacks and maybe just for everybody because he's just such a good part of this team?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, in baseball, everybody talks about the middle infield and how important it is. Same thing with football. You know, you look at the center position on offense and obviously a quarterback. You look at the middle linebacker position on defense and the safeties. And those core guys in the middle of the offense and defense are really important. When you have guys that have had a lot of football underneath their belt, and they can speak to the guys to the right and to the left, it goes a long way. So I think we have a luxury in Mackey getting people lined up, and there's a sense of calm as a quarterback. I know when I was playing, I had an older center playing with me too when I first got in, and Scott Wilson, and I felt comfortable when I was playing with him because it was like, hey, I'm with him. You know, this guy knows what he's doing. So I think there's definitely advantages to having people in the middle on both sides.
Steven?
Talking with the linebackers, they said they all kind
Sorry.
of. It's okay.
Steven, I love you, but your voice is not beating that Bernie Bus. Go ahead again.
Thank you. Talking to the linebackers, they said they looked up to guys like Doug Hogan and Darrell Smith, and now that they're here, they kind of knew a couple years ago they wanted to be as good as those guys, if not better. They think they can be better this year. How do you see this group of linebackers stack up to them and even other, even before that Syracuse backers you've seen in the past?
Yeah, I mean, there's a high bar to be set. When you look about the legends of the game here at Syracuse that have played linebacker, you know, thinking back to all the great ones. I mean, Danny Conley, what an unbelievable football player he was. And then you go all the way forward to the Doug Hogues and the Darrell Smiths. We've had so many good ones, you know, so the bar is high. And I love the fact that Marquise and Dyshon especially They want to be like those guys. And when we recruited them, that's what we told them. We said, hey, look, these guys are going to be gone here in another year. We need some guys to replace them, you know. And the thing I liked about those guys is they didn't want their jersey numbers. They wanted their own jersey numbers, you know. And that's a competitive side of things that I like too. They're really good kids. They want to be great, and now they got to go put it on tape and see what they can do.
Nate?
The mock game in the Dome today, was that as much of a trial for the coaching staff to get down
Yeah.
in communication with each other? And how
Yeah,
did
it
that
sure.
go?
Yeah, it sure was. You know, I think anytime you have a new staff, even though most of us have worked together, you know, you also have younger guys that are providing a ton of information. You know, they're providing intel throughout the course of the game, and to speak to those kids and to see how they speak, especially with some of them, you know, not being on the headsets a bunch as younger coaches that are in development, but they're essential. You know, a guy in the press box that's looking over for personnel, it's essential that they do a good job. They accentuate their speech throughout the course of the game, and they're not afraid to talk to the coordinator and say, no, it's this personnel coach, and that'll save a call or two in a game. It'll be big. So I think to be able to mesh all the personalities and the voices in a mock game is essential for the coaching staff.
Go over here to Brian.
Coach, at what point do you make that transition from preseason camp to then actually preparing for a game against Penn State?
Yep, I think it's different with every team. I think because we've lost some record holders, you know, and Ryan Nassib and our passing game with Alec Lemon and two guys that protected him so he can get it down the field. I think personally I wanted to start earlier this year on our first opponent. In years past, sometimes you waited until the week before. So we got started on these guys a few days ago. You know, we kind of sprinkled it in a little bit here, a little bit there. We didn't even really pronounce to the kids that it was Penn State as much as, hey, we're going to go against a scout team and start learning how to run cards. And it just happened to be some of the things that Penn State does. And then as we get through here on Friday and into Saturday's practice, we want to come back Sunday. We'll have a big kicking practice, but we'll also unveil the full scouting report, the numbers, the tendencies, which really you got to be careful, you know, because every year you don't know what that other team's going to be. And so you want to be careful when you go into the first game with your game plans, in my opinion. But we started a little bit earlier than years past.
Take a final question from Michael.
Have there been any developments in the kick return or punt return races that you might be able to share with us at this point?
I just think that we have some good guys that can provide us with some productivity back there. We have some, you know, when you're deep at tailback, you're deep at kick return. That's my philosophy on it. I do believe in tailbacks carrying the ball in kick return more than wideouts. In my opinion, they're used to getting hit. They're used to hitting it up in there fast. And then with the punt returners, you know, Richie. One thing about Richie Desir is he's extremely reliable. You know, he'll catch him in a crowd. He's a tough Haitian kid from Miami. You know, nothing phases him. You know, I think the first goal on a punt return is to catch it, not let it roll backwards and get the ball back to the offense. And the second most important thing is to see if we can get a few yards. You like a dynamic guy and stuff, but if he can't catch it as well as the next guy, then I'd rather possess the ball. You know, have that mindset first and foremost.
Thanks.